Hello and welcome to another video on my photography channel. In this video I want to show you my approach to editing a raw image that I just shot in Corel's AfterShot Pro 3. The version is from 2021 and then later using Corel's Paintshop Pro, also the 20, I think even the 2020 version. So some of you might think, hey, why not use Photoshop and why not use Lightroom or Capture One? I tried Photoshop for quite some time. I wasn't too happy with it's a stellar image editing tool, and Lightroom is also very good. But I didn't like the subscription model that Adobe puts on its users. And for me as a semi-professional, that is a little bit too overblown in terms of money that I would spend and for a lot of things that I don't need. If you get the entire package, then I don't need Illustrator and all of these things. So I'm not really a fan of that model. And with Corel, you basically pay for the software and then you're done. And you can use it as long as you want to upgrade or whatever, which I regularly did over the past couple of years. So I know these programs pretty well, and that is why I'm using them. I tried others. I recently, for a month or two, tried Lumina 3. I wasn't too happy with it. I cannot say anything about Lumina 4. I think that is out now. But Lumina 3, first of all, didn't really handle noise well in my view, and I really hate noise. I'm kind of a pixel peeper, and also I don't want to replace entire skies based on AI. The tools work brilliantly. I really have to give that to them, but I usually want my shots to show what I actually saw through the viewfinder. So AfterShot gives me all the options that I need, and the noise reduction in the plugins that you can download and install for free is brilliant, and a lot of the options that you get are pretty much the same as in Lightroom or other tools. I mean, at the end of all of it, it's basically the same technology that they're based on when it comes to digital imagery, especially with raw images. So, and the raw processing of the AfterShot is also pretty good. Cool. So I picked this one for today's example because I like the shot of this weaver bird. I shot a lot of weaver birds recently because right now here in South Africa it's August, and that means we are in deepest winter, close to getting into spring, as it's the southern hemisphere. And these guys are now starting to build their nests all around here. And I know a small weaver bird colony on in a couple of trees on a river not far from the place where I live. So I usually hang out there over the weekends, a couple of hours, and try to get some really good shots of them. This one was a bit tricky though, because the light was not too low, but of course it's in the tree and you get a lot of shadowy areas and areas that are very exposed to sunlight. So the exposure was kind of daunting in this case. This one was shot at on my Canon EOS 7D, which I really love. I just got it a couple of weeks ago, used for under I would say $300. And it's the Mark I, and I shot this under 800 ISO because of the low lighting conditions and because of the Sigma lens that I used for this, the 150-600 contemporary, which is a rather slow lens. It's a brilliant lens. It's great, but especially for the price. But the aperture could be a little bit wider, the lens could be a little bit faster. So this was also shot at f9 and at a shutter speed of 5/100 of a second. Okay, so let's try and take an approach to this to increase the image quality. Usually I do lens correction first, but that is not necessary in this case with this lens. And also chromatic aberration is something I've not seen on that lens yet. I've been using it for a month now, and I've never seen any major chromatic aberration anywhere. So let's take a look at the noise, which should be pretty strong, as the 7D is a APS-C sensor body. So yeah, as you can tell, there is a lot of noise here, especially color noise. So let's get rid of that. So this is one array of plugins that I normally use. And let's get rid of the color noise first. I don't even have to go too high. And it's really it's not that destructive when it clears the noise. At 30, let's go to 35. That's good. Okay. So this is already like really that worked already really well. Okay, now the next step, let's take a look at, now let's crop the image first. I think with this one I will go with a, yeah, that will be a portrait one, because it just works really well with the entire image setup, and it puts the little guy here right at the center. The eye is almost, I'm not too fuzzy, I'm not too fuzzy. I'm not too picky when it comes to the vertical or lines lining up. Like, I don't need the eye to be directly on that vertical line here. I think if an image works, it works. So I think this is a pretty good approach. And then let's check just the clipping warnings. Yeah, that's what I expected, because the main the lower part of the body here was exposed to a lot of sunlight while the rest was in the shadow, and he already has dark spots in his feathers. So there are clipping warnings for too bright or too dark. So let's go to our color curve and fix that a little. I usually don't like to use this approach, but because you usually go into these really weird gray areas at some point. But for this one, it seems to work quite nicely. And I want to make sure that if I add more contrast later on, I don't blow out certain areas here, but I want to also make the bird pop out a little bit more from the background. That is my main goal with this one. Okay, so let's see what colors we have in the image. For that, I usually crank up the saturation to full, just to see what kind of colors we have that are very prominent. And that is mainly here green and yellow, which is great. That does work well together. And then we have a little bit of orangey, reddish types on the tree in the back, on the bark, and then obviously a little bit of red on the and orange on the bird itself around the head. Okay, double click to set it back to default. You probably know that from other tools as well. That works in AfterShot the same way. And now I will not increase the overall vibrance. I use vibrance and stay away from saturation, because saturation can be, in a lot of cases, too strong per pixel, and vibrancy is more like a general approach. It feels more organic. You don't get these super strong effects, but I don't want them anyway. So vibrance is, in my view, a much more natural way of increasing some color strength in your image. So let's do that first. I use the color equalizer. That's another plugin that I use quite often. And just I want to increase the luminance to make the bird pop a little bit more and get rid of the shadows a little bit more. That seems to work quite well. And yes, the orange in the tree bark will also increase a little bit, but that's okay. This already looks pretty good and pops a bit more. Let's see if we can increase the vibrance a little bit without losing too much detail. I think that works quite well. Yeah, I mean the area here is super bright. That is something that I do not really like, but there's not much that I can do about it. I think even with burn tool would be too strong anyway, and you get these weird gray colors if you have highlights, so stay away from that and accept it for what it is. But I can diminish the highlights, and I want to diminish the highlights because of the highlights on the grass here. That I like this whole the motion and the eyes because he looks very focused on what he's doing, like tying this knot around those twigs and the beginning, that foundation of his nest here, to impress his future lady, which is always very cute. So let's diminish the highlights a little bit more. That works quite well. And maybe I can decrease the luminance of the green to even make him pop a little bit more without losing too much detail and getting some weird pixely effects in the back here. That looks okay. Increase the vibrancy a little bit. Can I increase? Yeah, okay. Yeah, that should work. Okay. So let's take a look at some other options that we have. I can try to work with the highlights and shadows a little bit more. That's getting a bit too washed out. Let's increase under the 4-tone white curve, the low mids a little bit more. Let's see what happens. It's getting a bit, I'm losing a bit of the contrast here. I mean, let's diminish the shadows and increase the low mids. That works good. Okay. Yeah, it's a bit more contrasty now. That is good. I think this works. What happens if I use the contrast here? That's a bit better. Not as much. Let's set that to 5. Okay. Let's check the noise. Not that we increased the noise. No, we didn't. Okay. That looks already pretty good. I like it. Okay. Let's see if we can increase the sharpness a little bit. I like the sharpening here in AfterShot because it doesn't give you the dreaded haloing that you get in other tools. This is a different approach than in Lightroom. Like, you don't have an overlay that you create, it just works on the image. And it is a rather subtle effect, but it works in the right areas. So if you take a look here, it's a very minute effect, but it works quite nicely. As I said, one higher. I don't want to exaggerate some sharp edges here that are already sharp. That works quite well. Let's take a look. Yeah. No, that's a bit too strong now. This is better. This is better. Okay. That looks pretty good. And the rest I will definitely do in Paintshop. So as I said, like what really, excuse the term, but turned me off when it came to Lumina was the export time from RAW to TIFF. In Lumina, it took up to 5 minutes, and I usually edit in bulk. So you wait like half an hour until you get the TIFFs out of the RAWs that you then can edit in another image editing tool. With this one, it's incredibly fast. I think the longest the longest part of the process is actually when you haven't opened Paintshop and it needs to load it. So take a look here. I just right click, go to edit with Corel Paintshop. You can use any tool you want, by the way, of course, and just set it up in the preferences. But when I tell it to export it as a TIFF, uncompressed, of course, into Paintshop, it loads Paintshop, and then in a few seconds you have the image available, ta-da, in Paintshop, and can do your thing with the tools that work better here than in AfterShot. So I'll just blow up the image a little bit because I cropped it quite heavily, and then just try to sharpen it a little, obviously. With a soft light sharpening, that should work best without creating too many problems. Yeah, that is okay. Is the noise still holding up? Yeah, there's yeah, from the sharpening, some minor noise. Okay. Yeah, the sharpening enhanced some minor noise elements. I could try to remove everything by hand, but that would take quite a bit. So what I will do is I will just try and use the one-step noise removal here in Paintshop, which also works really well. Yeah, that has done the trick. As I said, like the noise removal in both tools is phenomenal. At least in my view. Yes, sometimes you lose a lot of detail, especially when you shoot something with, I don't know, rock formations or something, or a lot of a very kind of already noisy background, like leaves and grass, or you have small trees with foliage in the background. That then can obviously, but it does that with every tool. It's really, it kind of baffles me how good the software is in those cases. Yes, there are downsides to this, obviously, but it does a pretty great job with the main things that you need when it comes to image editing. Let's see if we can work a little bit with the highlights and shadows here. Let's compare it. Yeah, I think this is a good approach because with the shadows being kind of diminished and then the midtones being set a little bit higher, I can get even a little bit more contrast out of this without overblowing the bright areas and blowing out the whites here. That works pretty well. I'm actually quite surprised that this worked this well. Of course, if something works or if your approach works, differs a little bit from image to image, but this definitely worked. Cool. Yeah, I think I'll stay with that. There's no lens dust, there's no sensor dust. I don't have any parts in this image that I would like to remove because they're too distracting. I mean, yes, this little twig here at the top, I could try to remove that, but that's a bit tricky to achieve, I think. Let me try. I don't think this will work even with the cloning tool. Size 50 and the feathering. Yeah, no hardness. That is what I usually use. Let's try what happens. That worked better than expected. Especially because of the strong feathering that I use here. It's like this, I think you know that just one stupid click with the clone tool can ruin an entire image. But with the feathering being set, like the hardness, like using a very soft brush, this usually works quite well. That didn't. Okay, let's undo this. Okay. Let's see. I mean, this is really pixel peeping. Let's move out of the image and let's check. Yeah, I think we can leave it as that. That should work. I don't know about you, but I don't think I would see this. I mean, you could even use a kind of slight vignette here to center the viewer's attention a little bit more even on the bird. I usually don't like using too much of that, too much vignetting. I mean, I've seen this a lot on other in competitions and stuff where people like vignette the hell out of an image, and I really don't like that approach. Let's see. Without, yeah, that's definitely too strong. Let's go to, I don't know, 25. No, far too strong. Or is it? I think it's, yeah, no, it's too strong. Let's reduce the radius. That should make it strong and but not go as deep. Let's try 15. I just want a little bit. Yeah, that looks better. That looks okay. Yeah, and then that kind of gets rid of the slight irregularities at the top here. I think it's pixel peeping, you know that. I don't think anyone, even on a print, would see that. Okay, so yeah, no, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. The grass looks nice and green, like the overly exposed highlights are gone without ruining the quality of the image. The bird pops a lot more. The eyes are still very prominent and like underline like the bird's focus. That is why I like this shot, that way he has that thin kind of grass thread here that he uses to tie this up, and how he like leans into it. It's such a great shot. I love it. And it's a pretty decent picture overall. So great. I'll leave it at that and save it. Cool. All right. I think that was a long enough video. Thanks for watching. And if you liked this and you got something out of it, hit the like button below. And if you want to keep up with me and keep connected, then hit the subscribe button. I will definitely add more videos soon about a couple of other things and maybe other examples with image editing. Trying to save like really bad shots, and I do a lot of really bad shots, trust me. Yeah, I hope I see you soon, and stay safe and take care and take good shots out there. Have a lovely one. Bye bye.